Okay, it looks like we're live. Are we actually live? Yeah, I should probably actually check that. I had my email pulled up because I had to go onto email to get a code to sign back into StreamYard because StreamYard signed me out because StreamYard was saying, "Hey, I need to have more space, so you need to." Am I mirrored again? I'm mirrored again, aren't I? Ugh, I hate it when it does this. Okay, let's see. Cinema layout, picture-in-picture layout, screen layout. Oh, geez. How do I do this again? I don't want to be mirrored. How does it let me not be mirrored? Camera, standard different, mirror my, no, I don't want to mirror my camera. There, I just want to be normal. And it might look normal to you out there watching, or at least as normal as I ever look. But yeah, I don't want to see myself mirrored in it because I'm used to seeing myself facing the other way. So when I have my hand on this side, it's on this side of the screen, you see? And this hand over here is on this side of the screen. So it confuses me. It confuses me so much. Al Davis says, I was just typing. I almost never got a notification from Brother Alan. Well, we're just getting started. It's okay. You haven't missed anything. So I've literally been going for like a minute now, and I haven't really talked about anything of any importance whatsoever. So business as usual, I suppose. But today I have to open up for you. Hello to you too. Good to see you. All right. Today I have to open up for you something I'm very excited about. I have, and hopefully Raheem will show up for this episode because I know he said he likes this particular Batman design, the Azrael Batman armor. Check that out from Detective Comics 667. Not actually the first appearance of this costume. And not that was obviously Batman number 500. And it wasn't even the first appearance of this costume in Detective Comics. That would have been Detective Comics number 666, which makes sense because 666 is the number of the beast, the number of the Antichrist. And this is the anti-Batman, Azrael Batman. You know, so like this guy had an interesting development as he was being created. And Denny O'Neil originally created this character to originally, not only was he going to replace Batman, but he was actually going to be the guy who broke the Batman himself. He was going to break Batman's back and then take his place. That was the original storyline. And Chuck Dixon was like, whoa, we can't do that. You know, like, so if you want people to buy into this guy as Batman, you can't have him be the guy who, you know, who put Batman in a wheelchair. That's not going to work. That's not going to fly. So I suggest we come up with another villain to be the guy who actually puts Batman in the wheelchair, and then Azrael defeats him. And then he takes over as Batman. And see, here's the idea behind this whole thing, is that originally Dennis O'Neil came up with this concept because he'd noticed that there were certain fans who were asking for Batman to become more brutal, more violent, more like a lot of the anti-hero characters that were popular in comics at that time, like the Punisher or Wolverine or Cable, who didn't mind taking a life. You know, not just if it was necessary, but just if it was convenient. Or, you know, the Punisher, it's just like that was his raison d'etre is to kill people. He kills bad guys. I love the Punisher. Don't get me wrong. He's like one of my favorite characters, actually. But Batman should not be that. And I've discussed before how a lot of people have the idea in their head that Batman just shouldn't kill people at all. Batman should never, ever stain his hands with the blood of his enemies. And I don't quite, myself, I don't quite subscribe to that notion. I actually am of the opinion that if it comes down to it, Batman should act more in the preservation of life as much as he possibly can. And if it comes down to if he's got to save his own life or save the life of an innocent person, if the criminal dies, the criminal dies. This is how that's going to work. That's my opinion. That's as I look at it. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me. I'd say the majority of comic book Batman fans would disagree with me. But not only was he up against other heroes in comics that didn't necessarily have such a moral qualm about taking the life of an evildoer. But even in the movies that were coming out at that time, you know, the Michael Keaton version of Batman killed people all the time. And, you know, that to me makes sense because, you know, like I've said before, Michael Keaton's Batman is based on the 1939 version of Batman, who did not have a code against killing yet. So Denny O'Neil wanted to do a story that showed what happens when you have a Batman that crosses that line. And he created Azrael to be what happens when the wrong guy becomes Batman. Let's put it that way. And Al Davis says, one of my earliest, oldest comic books is Knightfall. Still have the 5 points of articulation 90s figure, as do I. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. I think I got it in 1997, possibly. That sounds about right. It would have been mid 90s that would have come out. And the annoying hard shell cape. I believe this guy also has a plastic molded cape, but we're going to get more into that when we actually open them up. So we had Azrael and we had Bane, and this costume was designed by Jose. He was like Joe Quesada designed. I don't know why I was about to say Jose Quesada. Maybe because, like, you know, Spanish sounding last name. I just wanted to give him a Spanish sounding first name too. But I don't think he goes by Jose. I think he just goes by Joe. So anywho, we had a couple of different figures that were made. I believe that this is actually a repaint of an earlier Azbats figure where he was a much brighter, more comic booky blue. And I missed out on that one, but I'm glad I was able to find this one. I think that the metallic blue does a much better job of capturing the feel of the characters he was supposed to feel. And Quesada designed, he drew the Sword of Azrael miniseries, and he designed Azrael's standard costume. And then he designed the progression. I believe it was like technically four different suits. It was 3 different suits, but 4 different looks. We had this one. This was the first one, the Knightfall look. And then the one that was called then the third part was called Night Quest. And he wore this for the earlier part of Night Quest. And then the suit in the middle we'll call the Night Quest suit. And it pretty much looked like this one, except for it added a bat symbol to the chest. And it had a newer helmet design. This one to me kind of looks like Black Panther. But the second one was a little more distinct. And then the third design was this bad boy here. And I've, of course, opened up this figure on the channel long ago. And I believe that this one also shares a lot of the same parts with this other one. So we're going to compare it, contrast, and figure out what parts they have in common and what parts that they don't have in common. But yeah, basically it looked like this, except for all the red parts were blue. And what happened was, as he was fighting Batman, the blue paint started to chip off of it, and we'd see the red underneath. And then finally, just all the blue was burned away when the Batmobile exploded, and he was left with this all red suit. It was almost like the Azrael colors coming through. Like he made an Azrael suit and just kind of painted the suit blue instead of red. But yeah, you can see that it's got that more distinct sort of helmet to it, where it's almost like a little more of a literal Dark Knight than the figurative nickname that Bill Finger came up with. Yes, it was Bill Finger who coined that term, not Frank Miller. And then there was a repaint of this one, and of course I opened this one up on the channel too, and I love this one. Speaking of the Kenner 5-point of articulation version, Mcfarlane actually did their own figure of it as an homage, and it is beautiful. I do love this figure. I think I might like this figure more than the more comic book accurate figure, despite the comic book accuracy. But there's no denying that the red, black, and gold look, that is sharp. You gotta love that. I wish he had looked like it's in the comic book, honestly. And they did eventually bring this this design into the comic book continuity, so it did technically become his costume in the comic book, but it was not the costume that he actually wore during the Knight's End storyline, unfortunately. So let's set him aside now, and we're going to get back to our new figure. So I woke up this morning, and I knew I wanted to try to do a video today because, you know, Monday and Tuesday, those are the days that I go in early to work, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be here at the house Wednesday, so I probably won't do another video. I can't honestly say I will do another video until at least Thursday. If we're lucky and I wake up early enough that I can do some videos on Monday and Tuesday, I will. And we do have a lot of stuff to open up, a lot of cool things. And I should be receiving on Monday my order from Frazetta Girls with my 5.5 inch Conan figure, their Masters of the Universe style Conan figure, and hopefully sometime this month I should be getting the Big Bad Toy Store order of the Boss Fight Studios, their 5.5 inch Conan figure. So we're gonna have two different Masters of the Universe style Conan figures coming up. That's very exciting. Plus, I've got the other Motu-like figure that I want to open up. I thought about doing that today, but I thought it might be more fun to have that and the Conan figures back to back. And I already opened the Legends of Dragonor figure, Venatica. I already opened her, and she was really cool. So I'm definitely going to get more of those figures. So I was like, well, I got things I got to do anyway. I want to go get something to eat. So I'm hungry, and I want to run by and get some gas. Go by Walmart and get some gas because that's where the cheapest gas is near my place right now. And I was like $3.30 a gallon over there. I think it's cheaper in Lawrenceville, but where I'm at, $3.30 is about as cheap as you're going to get. And I wanted to run by Target because I wanted to try to find some more of the Mattel Batman figures. And I was unfortunate in that I did not find Robin or the Joker. If they have gotten any more in since when I picked mine up, they've sold out again. So, and I'm pretty sure they got at least one more order in because I had seen a Batman there the other day. One figure there, and it was the one I already had. But now they had nothing. So, but I did see this bad boy, so I went ahead and picked him up. And then I decided, well, that's obviously what I'm going to open up today. That was the Fates, the Universe, God, the Force, whatever you want to call it. That was it telling me, hey, this is what you're going to open up today. And I agreed. I thought that was a good idea. So now I've been talking for about 12 minutes, and I haven't even opened up the figure yet or even said really much about it at all. So the people who complain that I talk too much and don't show the figure enough, there's some ammunition for you. Al Davis says the bat symbol on that looks great. Can imagine a sexy, cool bat wing designed in that shape with a huge sweeping forward. That would actually be really cool. That would be awesome. I could definitely imagine that. But yeah, I do love that figure. I love both of these Knight's End figures. I wish I could have gotten the blue one. Was never able to find the blue one. And I'm sure if I look for him now, he's probably really expensive. But you know, I kind of hope at least this one will scratch that itch for me with the blue. I do think he looks really cool. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started on this. I do want to talk about the artwork on the back, which is Kelly Jones and his wonderful, super stylized, just ridiculously exaggerated style of art. And I've said before, I'm a huge fan of Kelly Jones. I really enjoy his stuff. And it's a little much for some people. I understand that. I get how some people could look at it and just be like, well, that just looks ridiculous. How can I take that seriously? I feel the same way about Absolute Batman, folks. And I know a lot of you guys love Absolute Batman, and I'm not trying to rag on it too hard. But me, I just look at it and I'm like, that just looks silly. And I kind of feel like that's the problem that a lot of people have with Kelly Jones. So I think that's maybe why, even though I do think Absolute Batman looks kind of ridiculous, I have a little bit of sympathy for the fans of it who actually think it looks awesome. And I can understand how you would think it will look awesome, but I can't take it seriously. I'm sorry. And I can see how, even though I look at this and I think it looks awesome, I can see how somebody would look at it and be like, how can you take that seriously? It looks ridiculous. But honestly, I kind of feel like Kelly Jones was kind of pushing the As-Bats design to make it look kind of ridiculous. I think he was kind of making fun of it a little bit. But of course, he draws a ridiculously exaggerated Batman too. But his Batman just looks awesome to me, and his As-Bats I think looks really awesome. I love a lot of the little details of it and all the lats. He's just got this insane amount of lats. It looks like he's breaking out or something. So and Kelly Jones just has like such a great way of drawing shadow. He's got that kind of Bernie Wrightson kind of quality to his line work that I always really appreciate. Just man, I could probably just stare at this thing and talk about just the image on the back for hours. But let's not do that. Let's actually talk about the figure. So Al Davis says, I fucking love that image. I agree. And Al Davis says, I can see it working with a spare hooded Skeletor head on it too. Well, that's an interesting thought. Hey, it's not like I don't have an extra Skeletor right here that we can try that out with. I probably have a few of them. I haven't tried to get this head on or off of anything in a while. It might be stuck on there pretty good because this one is not the Skeletor head that came on there. That's from a Classics, and that one, the head socket is a little smaller. So I don't know how well that one's gonna fit, but I am sure that I have another Skeletor figure around here somewhere. Probably one that I can find that I won't even have to get up to play around with it. I bet there's even one in this bag down here. Sure enough, right there. No, it's Faker. We were close. There's Skeletor. So I've got this Skeletor head. So we'll try that one on there just for fun. We'll see if we can pop this one off and just see what it looks like. All right, so here he is out of the package. He does indeed have a rubber molded cape, this rubbery kind of plastic. And I predicted that was the case. I couldn't quite tell through the packaging, but I was like 99% sure that was what it was. Because like I said, this is a repaint of an older figure. And back during the day that Mcfarlane was making that figure, that was how they did that. Now, I don't know. I don't see my snips around here anywhere. And I was digging through this drawer that I keep all this stuff in earlier. So it might have got buried under something. Oh, no, it's still here on the desk. It did get buried under something. It just got buried on the desk. So we can go ahead and get that rubber tab. There's double rubber tab around his tummy, around his abs. And then there's rubber tabs around each one of his ankles. Is that it for rubber tabs? Nope. There's some around his wrists. I just couldn't see them because like there's so much sculpted detail on these gauntlets that the rubber tab just kind of disappeared underneath it, and I couldn't see it. This one's more around his forearm, but he's just got all this gribble all over his gauntlets. All these old technical doodads. And then Al Davis says the neck guard looked a bit He-Man-ish looking to me for the first time. I can see that. So yeah, here he is out of the package. And I gotta say, I really like the coloring on this figure. I think I touched on it a little bit before, but I always imagined this particular color pretty much exactly like this, with kind of a very dark metallic blue. They got kind of more silver on the collar, I think, than what I would have imagined. I would have imagined that being blue as well, but maybe some silver around the light on the front. And I think that's why he didn't have an actual bat symbol, is because he was supposed to have this bat signal that projected out of that light on the front, and then very yellowish golden shoulder pads, a lot of golden details on the gauntlets, like the little compartments there, the little pouches, those are colored in gold, and the gold ribbing along there, the dark metallic blue, and then he's got some very light blue over his tummy. Now I know, like when Kenner did their version of this suit, which they called Knight's End Batman, even though it wasn't Knight's End Batman at all, it would have been more like Knightfall or Night Quest Batman. They colored in the abs silver, and I thought that was a good look. So, but this one is more like how we can see how it was illustrated in the comic book, where it was colored like a light blue. But I kind of figure maybe it was actually supposed to be silver, because you'd see people drawing it kind of. I don't know if you really see that with Kelly Jones' version here, But like when Jim Ballant drew it, for example, he drew that as being very metallic. So, and then the dark gray for the tights. And this is interesting. They could have gone with like a metallic gold for the utility belt and the leg belt, which is the most 90s superhero fashion accessory you could possibly have. But instead, they went with more of a matte kind of goldenrod color. And I think that that's really cool. So, ZMUG561 asks, how do you pay for them? And with money. I use money. That's the rather traditional, I admit. But yeah, this one went through Target. I used my debit card. That's how I usually, like, a lot of the times, though, I do try to use, if I'm making a big purchase, I like to use the PayPal pay in 4 method because that kind of offsets the cost a little bit, or Klarna. I like to use Klarna an awful lot because then I can make big payments and and smaller payments, and that works better for me. Al Davis says Alan has a job. Another way to put it, but yeah, like I do work a lot. I do work an awful lot. So Al Davis also says it looks awesome. Now I want one too. Well, I hope you're able to find one because he's a really cool figure, and you should definitely have him. So I haven't talked about the figure stand or the trading card yet. So let's go ahead and move on to that before I get too deep into the weeds on the actual figure. And as I've said before, I feel like every figure should come with a figure stand. And here's the one this guy comes with the classic Milton Glazier designed DC logo on it. And then we have the trading card with the Kelly Jones artwork on there. Very nice Kelly Jones artwork on there, which we've already talked about. Nice image. And here's what the back looks like. And it reads, Batman Detective Comics 667 data file, real name, Jean-Paul Valley. Pre-Flashpoint, what the stuff that really counts. Pre-Flashpoint, Jean-Paul Valley's discovery of his dying father, dressed as Azrael, changed his life forever. Brainwashed into the system to become the Church of Saint Dumas' assassin, Jean-Paul Valley worked with Batman instead, standing in for the Dark Knight when Bane broke the hero's back. Unbalanced by his upbringing, Valley became a more violent Batman and wore heavier armor. He later surrendered the mantle up to the newly healed Bruce Wayne and set on his own adventures as Azrael. Very simplified recounting of the tale, but they only got so much room on the back of a trading card, and you can see they used most of it. So that's one of the better bios that I've read on one of these Mcfarlane trading cards. And I can be critical of such things, but in this case, kudos to them. They did a good job. So let's go ahead and get this put back together. I can toss that in the recycling later. There we go. And we can move on to our figure. So let's see if I can get his head off. Came off relatively easily. And the neck post stayed with the figure. Now, this is not going to be a big enough peg to put this on, but I'm going to the Origins heads are so much, the peg hole inside is so much bigger, but I think I can kind of hold it on. And yeah, it's a little large because it's that Origin size. But if you wanted to get like I suppose one of the new movie figures might fit really well on there. I might try to put a Jared Leto Skeletor head on here and see how well that works at some point. But that'll give you an idea. So I can get that pop back on there. All right, and we can pop Jean-Paul's head back on here too. And I'm glad that head came off so easily. And he does have rather long ears. Longer than I usually see Jean-Paul's Batman ears. Joe Quesada's way of drawing Batman was very heavily influenced by Frank Miller's. So he liked to give him the stubby little Frank Miller Dark Knight ears whenever he would draw Batman. And that carried over to the Azrael design. And I think most people most artists that would tackle Azrael felt kind of beholden to stick with the stubby little ears. Even Kelly Jones, who give him some rather substantial ears there. I'd say those are about at least Neil Adams length, which is, a good happy medium for Batman ears. Kelly Jones, like that is a stubby Batman ear for Kelly Jones. Kelly Jones Batman's ears are usually like a foot long. But yeah. And then there's like, I don't know what this thing is here. Is that a zipper? I don't know what that is. It's kind of strange. But yeah, like a lot of the times the artists would draw this cape as like it looked like it was just kind of flowing straight out of the breastplate. But here we do have like a little bit of a ridge there. And the cape is still colored in that metallic blue. It all looks really cool. So, and I think all these colors come together nicely with the metallic blue and the gold and the light blue and the dark gray and the silver at the claws. And he does actually have his claws extended, which is nice. One thing that I had a problem with the Knight's End costume with Mcfarlane's version of that is they just gave him like these two solid fists. And I would have rather had at least one hand with the claws splayed open like this. I think that would have been better. So I wouldn't have mind one fist hand, but two fist hands, it's just like, can't we just get one claw hand? Wouldn't that be nice? I don't know. Whatever. And we get what we get. So let's go ahead and talk about his articulation some. So as bats can look up about that far, which is a great range of motion for looking up. Look down about that far. Tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side. Rotate the head all the way around. Of course, it's going to bump into this neck piece a little bit. That's just going to happen. And then the arms rotate all around. But again, they're going to bump into the breastplate. That's just going to happen. And they raise up to the sides about that far. As bats does have a bicep swivel, and it's in the middle of the shoulder pad. They could have just put the joint right here, but they didn't. It's actually up in the shoulder pad. He's got double jointed elbows. That's about the range of motion you get at the elbows. And then does not seem like the gauntlet itself twists around at all, but he's got the cool Mcfarlane wrist articulation, so you can move these wrists around pretty much any which way you want. And he's got the cool Mcfarlane torso articulation, bends from side to side like that, backwards like that, forwards like that. You can see rather than having the abdominal piece tuck into the trunks, as they often do, this time the belt kind of lays over the trunk piece, which makes sense because it preserves the shape of the armor over his abs. Now, as bats can kick up about that far. Great range of motion there. And he can do the splits no problem. And does have a little bit of a wobble there. I will say that this one seems like it has a tendency to want to pop the thigh underneath the trunk line a little bit. So you want to make sure that you, when you put it back, that you've got the thigh properly under the trunk, how it's supposed to go. And then double jointed knees, that's about the range you get the motion at the knees. No boot cut, but he does have the cool Mcfarlane articulation at the ankle, where it rotates all the way around where the ankle meets the shin, and then it rotates all the way around where the foot meets the ankle. And then his foot can point down about that far. His foot can point up about that far. And he's got toe articulation just to show off. So that, I think, is pretty much it for the articulation. Let's compare and see what parts this guy shares with the Night Quest version of Batman. And I'm going to use the comic book style one since the coloring is a little more similar. You can see the coloring is pretty much the same on these guys, except with the obvious exception of metallic red instead of metallic blue. And the ad piece is definitely more of a neutral gray and less baby blue like this one is. And it seems like the gray tights are a bit darker on the Knightfall version versus the Night Quest version. And then Al Davis says, I'm not sure where I stand on the bat ear length argument. I like the really short, stubby horns almost look, but I love the long, crazy Doberman with the clip ears look too. And Al Davis says, I quite like the cape, seeing it now. Yeah, they did a nice job sculpting it. If they had stuck with plastic capes, I probably wouldn't have complained. But once they started doing wired capes, then I became just a wired cape fanatic. But I can forgive this one just having a plastic cape because, again, this is a basic figure. This isn't like a nearly $40 figure that I'm talking about. This is the standard price. So I can see, I can see it just having a plain plastic cape. But like I said, this is also a repaint of an earlier figure. So it's going to look like an earlier figure. That just makes sense. And as far as the length of Batman's ears, I like that Neil Adams length. That's the length that I like personally. When I draw Batman, it's usually like a Neil Adams kind of length. Although I think it often, honestly, I kind of feel like it depends a lot on your style of drawing Batman. Like, I don't think that Frank Miller's Batman will look as good to me with longer ears as he does with the short, stubby ears. And likewise, I don't think Kelly Jones' Batman would look as good if his ears weren't like, a foot long. I think that's part of what makes his Batman. So I kind of feel like it depends a lot on the style that the artist themselves is bringing to the character as to what works better and what works not quite so well. That's just my own humble opinion. So it does look like that the arms are pretty much identical, at least down to the gauntlet. Now, you might think that the gauntlets might be identical as well, but it looks to me like they are not. They look to me like two completely different style of gauntlets, and they probably could have gotten away with using the same gauntlets on each one of these, but they didn't. They actually paid attention to how these gauntlets were drawn in the comics, and these ones are a bit larger and bulkier, and the shuriken launcher is a bit more pronounced on this one. So it is a completely different gauntlet. And of course, this one also has, like I pointed out before, the ammo belt to feed the shurikens into the gauntlet, whereas the Kenner version doesn't have that, interestingly enough. Lone Dragon is here and says, I like Batmans with longer penis ears. Sure, Lone Dragon. As you say, Lone Dragon, as you say. The legs seem to me to be identical right down to the leg belt. The ab armor seems to be the same. The utility belt seems to be the same. The torso underneath the breastplate seems to be the same, but obviously the breastplates are completely different and the capes are completely different, whereas this guy has a proper fabric, pleather, whatever this is, a soft goods cape. It's not actually soft goods, but you know what I mean. This guy has more like these stiff kind of bladed wings that just give him a more menacing appearance. So basically, this is like your first stage Azrael Batman. Like, technically, he starts out wearing the regular Batman suit, and then he wears the gauntlets with the regular Batman suit. And then this is like his first full bat suit that he designed himself. And this is Azbats in his final form. So you can see them both next to each other. And Al Davis says, I love the long ears in Judgment on Gotham, but Ben Affleck had brawler, boxer, Zorro costume, and I loved his stubby ears. Yeah, see? And honestly, I kind of feel like Ben Affleck could have pulled off the Neil Adams look also. I think that would have worked. But yeah, like Simon Bisley is a good example of an artist who did go for like the bulkier Batman look, but still gave him the longer ears, and it still worked. And I think that had more to do with the way they drew Batman's face. Is Batman's, the way that Simon Bisley tends to draw Batman's face is very much in line with the Neil Adams style of Batman. He's got a very Neil Adams-ish Batman face, even though the physique is obviously like quite a bit more exaggerated than what Neil Adams did. But man, if I could pick just like 20 more action figures for Mcfarlane to do, just 20 more for him to do, probably the one Batman figure that I would pick would be the Simon Bisley version. Even above the Neil Adams version, and I know they're actually doing a Neil Adams version, but assuming that they weren't, I would, and Neil Adams is my most favorite Batman artist, but I would pick Simon Bisley over Neil Adams even, just because I feel like his Batman is a bit more distinct. And Neil Adams' Batman is so definitive that, like, most Batman figures look like Neil Adams drew them anyway, if we're being honest about it. Lego Rebel Fleet Trooper says, middle length ears are the best length to me. 90s Justice League and some of those Fabok designs. See, yeah, that's where I'm at. Happy medium. That's where we're going. The Neil Adams length. That to me is ideal. Now, that's again not to say that I mind when we make them longer or shorter, because like it works beautifully with a lot of different artist designs. But yeah, like and this one, I think like I kind of feel like that's about Neil Adams' length. That's about the length of Batman era that I like personally, me personally. So Al Davis says if only had sent Azrael to another fictional DC city to be an Iron Man type of alternative Batman, could have gone steampunk or diesel punk and shared villains with all the DC Rogues gallery. Hey, you know, you could still do that. It could still work. That could be a cool idea. And then Al Davis says Bisley's Batman had a cape like Spawn, pre-Spawn, and it was fucking majestic too. I agree. I was in awe of, and oddly enough, they both came out the same month. Kelly Jones with Batman Red Rain, and Simon Bisley with Judgment on Gotham. And I saw these two great interpretations of Batman. And Neil Adams is the greatest, but Kelly Jones and Simon Bisley, I kind of feel like both of their Batmen had a lot of things in common, whereas obviously they differed in a lot of other ways as well. But I think where they were both the same was the idea of taking the design of like the classic Batman design, even with like the blue and gray suit, and just kind of pushing it as far as you could into their own unique styles, and gave us like two of the best designs of Batman that I've ever seen. So those are definitely two different, like, as far as like stepping away from just the vanilla kind of Batman, that sort of Neil Adams, Jim Aparo, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. To me, that's like the definitive Batman. But if we want to step away from that and get into alternate different versions of it, those are two of my favorite versions of the classic Batman costume. Besides that interpretation, I would even fit like the animated series, the Bruce Timm design. I would even fit that into like that sort of Neil Adams type of style, even though it's like it's made more for a cartoon, so it's a bit simpler. Alex Toth would be another one that would fit into that category. Don Newton, Marshall Rogers, a lot of guys that draw really good Batmans, and like they're stylistically unique, but still they kind of fit in that Neil Adams framework. I think that's as I look at it. And then Al Davis says that's super cool. Didn't know that. That's awesome. Cheers, Alan. Hey, I am a font of you, especially when it comes to Batman. When I was criticizing the Robert Pattinson Batman once, somebody who used to be a friend of mine on Facebook and decided to unfriend me because he's a weirdo. Decided to unfriend and block me. Because I didn't like the Robert Pattinson Batman movie, and I wasn't quiet about it. I wouldn't just shut up and stop talking smack about it. Said, "Oh yeah, you're just the expert on Batman," and my response was, "Yes, exactly. I'm the expert on Bat. I know more than anyone else about Batman." This is not up for debate. And as have you ever heard of Batman Snow, art by Seth Fisher? Great story that had some beautiful art. Adam Westlake, but sort of realer. I think I might have read that one. I'll have to check it out. So when did it come out? Like around what time period? If it came out in the last like 10 years or so, there's a good chance that I haven't read it because I haven't really been paying it that much attention to comics for the past 10 years. So sorry. But I have seen some comics in the past 10 years that I've enjoyed, but it's just one of those things where like there's too many old comics for me to read that I'll go back and enjoy reading those. I read a lot of the old stuff. There's still plenty of old comics that I haven't read, and there's still plenty that I would enjoy reading again. Like I could read Thrill Killer right now, and that's not one that like a whole lot of people know about, but it's one of my favorite Batman comics. But yeah, I will Batman Snow. Let me look that up real quick. I'll look that up real quick and see if I am familiar with it, because I might have read it. If it's an older comic, I might have read it a long time ago. J.H. Williams. Oh yeah, I know this one. Yeah, that is some really nice artwork there. But wait, I don't know if that is the one you're talking about, because that says J.H. Williams, and you said Seth Fisher. So, am I thinking of something else? Are you thinking of something else? Let me just put Seth Fisher and see what I get. Not Seth. Hit the wrong button. Seth Fisher. There we go. Right under Seth McFarlane. Well, see, that has the picture that was from that story. So is it J.H. Williams or is it Seth Fisher? I'm really confused now. But yeah, I am familiar with. Yeah, that's some really nice. That's some really nice artwork there. Yeah, I had seen that one before, long time ago. I read that one. Yeah, that one's some good stuff. That is some good stuff. Yeah, and he did the art for Real World, the Green Lantern story, Trippy as Balls, worth a look to Real World. That sounds familiar to me too. Let's look that up. So I probably read that one too. Yep, that's actually the first thing that pops up. J.M. DeMatteis wrote that one, and or is it DeMatteis? Yeah, I've read this one. That was a long time ago. He's a good writer. He was the one who wrote that that run of the Spectre that we were talking about the other day, where Hal Jordan was the Spectre, and he wrote my favorite Spider-Man comic book that isn't by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, which is Kraven's Last Hunt. So he's done a lot of good Spider-Man stuff, but Kraven's Last Hunt is just comic book perfection. Yeah, like it's a. See, I don't know. I'm kind of curious about that because when I looked at it, it said J.H. Williams drew it, but did it maybe Seth drew the cover? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into this a little more because now I'm really curious about it. Seth Fisher, Batman Snow. But yeah, if I look at the cover here, it says Dan Curtis Johnson, Seth Fisher. It does say Seth Fisher on there last. So maybe he did the inks. Maybe J.H. Williams did the pencils or the layouts, and then Seth did the inks. It says here on Google, Batman Snow is a comic book storyline originally serialized in Legends of the Dark Knight 192 through 196 and collected as trade paperback, co-written by Dan. Okay, J.H. Williams wrote it with Seth by Williams and the late Seth Fisher, but it doesn't say how they divided up the art duties. So it could have been maybe just J.H. Williams did the layouts and then Seth did the finishes, or it could be that it's a pencils and inks situation. But this is my guess. This is me making a guess without knowing. Is if it says that J.H. Williams came up with the story, or if he co-wrote the story with Dan Curtis Johnson, my guess would be that his contribution to it was doing the plot as far as layouts go, and then Seth would have come in and done the actual finished artwork over that. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I have read this, but it would have been such a long time ago. I need to read it again. and refamiliarize myself with it. So I'll try to do that later on tonight when I have some downtime. I'll try to, honestly, Legends of the Dark Knight is such a great series, and there's so many good Batman stories in there that you could choose from, and you could probably just pick one at random, and you're going to read a great Batman story. So yeah, I definitely want to check that out. Other stories that I would recommend from that was, speaking of Knightfall, Venom by Dennis O'Neil and illustrated by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. So some great artwork. Definitely worth checking out that one. Gothic by Grant Morrison. That's a really cool, creepy Batman story, which adds some extra layers to his origin, if you don't mind it being non-canon or straying a little bit more from the traditional Batman origin. And my personal favorite Legends of the Dark Knight storyline, Prey by Doug Mensch and Paul Gulacy, which deals with like a Batman versus Hugo Strange, and Catwoman's involved with it. Very cool stuff. And a lot of great Legends of the Dark Knight stories that are definitely worth checking out. And they got a lot of artists and writers that came on to it that were, some of them weren't necessarily like mainstream guys. You had like Ted McKeever and I'm drawing a blank on his name. Why can't I remember this guy? Kevin O'Neill. Kevin O'Neill did a Batmite story, which was awesome. But yeah, you get some great artists in there and some great writers. You had people like Matt Wagner and Mike Zack and all kinds of great comic book artists and writers working on that book. And since it wasn't like mainline continuity, they could just come in there and do whatever they wanted to with Batman as a character. So a lot of great stuff. Anyway, I think that's it for our Knightfall Batman. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please make sure that you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about this particular version of Batman and this particular figure. And Knightfall is one of my favorite Batman comic book storylines of all time. And I am very excited about the animated movie, which the designs of it look very much like Kelly Jones's covers for that series, which surprised me. Like I was like, wow, they went full Kelly Jones on this, and it looks awesome. Al Davis says, I love Kevin O'Neill's work on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yes, he did all of that, and he did Martial Law, which is the thing that I first encountered his work with was Martial Law. And he did one of the greatest Green Lantern storylines of all time, which is a prequel story with Abin Sur in it, where basically Abin Sur descends into hell to save a little girl. And it was written by some guy, some British writer. I think he like wrote a little bit of Swamp Thing or something at that time. Alan Moore. You might have heard of him. I think he did some stuff later on. Oh yeah, he worked on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen too, didn't he? Yeah, he was the writer on that. But yeah, that to me is like one of the greatest Green Lantern stories ever written. Certainly the greatest Green Lantern story about like one of the supporting Green Lantern characters. Al Davis. The Snow was written by Dan Curtis Johnson, art by Seth Fisher, I think. Hope you enjoy. Cheers, Alan. Thanks for the show and everyone in the chat too. Peace and love to all. And I second what Al Davis said there. Thanks everybody for joining us in the chat. Thanks everybody for joining us in the replay. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff. I gotta go now. I have other work to do, but we will talk to you again sometime, hopefully in the near future. If not Monday or Tuesday, then I'll try to have a show up on Thursday. Will be the next show, and we'll just see what we have to open then. All right, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, Lone Dragon. Right back at you. We'll talk to you all next time. Bye.